New York State Governor Kathy Hochul recently revealed her proposal to roll back bail reform. The Katal Center recently rallied with organizers of impacted families as well as people, demanding the legislature reject the proposal and pass a budget to continue to decarcerate, close more prisons and jails, and invest in real safety. We've got joining us here discussing this the lead organizer at Katal Center for Equity, Health, and Justice, Melanie Dominguez. And Melanie, thank you for being with us. And when we talk about what's going on with the governor's proposal, obviously a step in the wrong direction, you feel, but what are the intended consequences if this plays out?
Absolutely. So basically, exactly what you said. In her executive budget, Governor Hochul proposed to eliminate the standard that judges set the least restrictive condition that will reasonably assure a person's return to court. And instead, the judges now will be left, if this happens, they're going to be left with widespread confusion and disagreement among child judges to determine whether or not they won't have any rules and guidelines to abide by now. So that's kind of like what will result. But not only that, this will mean that more Black and brown people and people that are in poverty will be detained in pretrial jails across the state. And when you look at it closer, what is happening in New York City, there's a crisis at the Rikers Island jail complex. And the rollbacks of bail reform will result in more people being funneled into Rikers Island that will be exposed to these life-threatening conditions. And just to put it into more context, the vast majority of people that are at Rikers right now are there for, pre-trial. They haven't been convicted of anything, but this rollback on bail reform will just exacerbate the crisis found there, and we cannot have that.
Well, what do you say to the critics who say, listen, you know what, the bail reform, it needed work, it should have probably been adjusted some. What do you say to critics who say this bail reform is just too lenient?
And it's not. The bail reform is not lenient, and the proof is in the data. We've seen that since the years that bail reform has been implemented, at the start of 2019 and in the years that follow, it has had no correlation to the spike in crimes. It really has not. But instead, what it has shown us is that it's proven to have worked. Instead of gutting back bail reform, we actually need to make sure that we're expanding it and giving people, especially Black and brown and low income folks, the ability to wait for their court in the community. We all know that they stand a bigger fighting chance if they're in the communities fighting for the court cases rather than behind bars where they have so many barriers. They cannot have it's much harder to get in contact with their lawyers, to get in contact with just like finding the right documents that they need to fight their cases. And one of the things that I said earlier, like the rules in bail reform already make it so that the judges have a clear understanding of what is need to be done to make sure that people return to court. And so eliminating the least restrictive condition, like I said, will only generate more widespread confusion and disagreement among judges.
And when we talk about judges, obviously they are, they have sentencing guidelines. And with this bail reform that the governor's talking about, that could vastly change. What are you hearing from the people on the inside, the ones who have, incarcerated, dealing with this right now? What are you hearing from the population?
Yeah, and we at Katal, we have members that across the state who have been incarcerated or have loved ones that are currently incarcerated. And one of the things that they're widely concerned about is just the fact that gutting back bail reform will result in more people being funneled into the jail system. And like I said, being exposed to these life-threatening conditions. And people don't want that. And, when you have a loved one that's incarcerated, it's much harder to visit them. It's just so difficult for families. And it's just going to create more separation between families. And so having bail reform in the state that it is going to make sure that families stay connected, and it's going to give people a stronger fighting chance to fight their court cases.
And for those of us who are in the Bronx and, of course, New York City, a lot of people have always been talking about Rikers Island, how this actually could potentially impact what goes on at Rikers Island. From your perspective, how does this change if the governor's plan goes forward? How does it change what we could possibly see at Rikers Island?
Absolutely. So Rikers Island right now is in a state of crisis. Since Mayor Eric Adams took office, there's been at least 20 people that have passed away in New York City jails, and Rikers is the violence at Rikers is at an all-time high. And the jail population has been increasing because of the mayor's inability to put measures in place to reduce the jail population. And so, for example, since the mayor took office, there's been about right now the current jail population at Rikers is that of 6,000 people. And the last December, the Department of Corrections Commissioner Luis Molina had told the Criminal Justice Committee at City Council that they are expecting that another 1,100 people will be held pretrial by the end of this year. And so this is without gutting back bail reform. If you add gutting back bail reform to the mix, that's going to exacerbate the number of people that are being put in life-threatening conditions at Rikers Island. But not only that, it's going to take us further away from effectively shutting down Rikers. The only way to shut down Rikers is through decarceration. And so the jail population needs to go down. But right now, under Mayor Eric Adams, it's been going up. And with Governor Hochul's proposal to gut bail reform, it will just take us further away. And we cannot have that. And like I said, bail reform has been working. The data has shown us that it has no correlation with the spike in crimes. And then we have a lot of legislators up in Albany who are fighting and holding the line to protect bail reform because they know that this is the sensible thing to do for our communities to keep our communities safe. And at the end of the day, we also need the governor to invest in things like housing, healthcare, education, and jobs. That's ultimately what keeps our communities safe. We need that. And so instead of debating whether or not bail reform should be gutted, it should not. They should be debating around, what are other ways that we can invest and help our communities thrive.
Yeah. There was a recent rally in Albany you took part. Give us your takeaways from the rally in Albany. Were you encouraged by the support that you received?
Yeah, there's been a lot of meetings with legislators and just like making sure that we keep the momentum up around protecting bail reform and making sure that our communities understand what is at stake, but also understand what bail reform is all about. And so these rallies are really good at that and just like building the momentum, holding our elected officials accountable and holding the governor accountable, knowing that we will not stop fighting until we protect bail reform and we reject her proposal to gut it. And so there's a bunch of other rallies coming down the line as well. And a few of the organizers and advocacy groups that have been on the front lines are gearing up for that. But to just let you know, like bringing it back to what's happening in New York City, we do have a rally that is coming up it's going to be on Thursday, April 27th at 1 p.m. at Foley Square. And that's the day that there's going to be a federal court hearing to determine whether or not there should be a federal receiver that should take control of Rikers or if the Adams administration will remain in charge. And so that just goes to show how dire the conditions at Rikers have gotten that now we're at a moment where the federal government needs to intervene. And so we're going to be out there to demand that the federal government does take control of Rikers from the Adams administration. But even that, we are going to continue to push the mayor to address the crisis by cutting the number of people that are incarcerated in New York City jails, shutting down Rikers, and then again, like investing in our communities in things that we actually need to help us thrive. And so that's a little bit about what's happening and what we have coming up.
Yeah, and when you talk about Mayor Adams, obviously, a lot of people not happy when it comes to how he's handled this particular situation. Are you optimistic that, or are you even confident that the mayor can be able to handle this by himself or his administration, or are you adamant about saying, listen, we need some federal intervention right here?
Yeah, and I guess to your point, like right now, what's exacerbating the crisis at Rikers is the gross mismanagement of the jail system. And we see that under the Adams administration, there's been a culture around not doing the proper investigation that is needed when a correctional officer is it's being charged of like misconduct, of abuse of power and abusing of those that are incarcerated at the jail complex. And so they are getting away with so much that, and this is just like ultimately impacting those that are incarcerated at Rikers, which the majority, like I said, haven't been convicted of anything, are just waiting at Rikers for their day in court, which can take months in this current situation that we are in right now in the city. And so we have an understanding that the mayor has done absolutely nothing to address this mismanagement and alleviate the crisis at Rikers. And so we are pushing for there to be for the federal government to intervene. But even so, even if they do that, we still need Mayor Eric Adams to commit to shutting down Rikers and put measures in place to decarcerate.
What has been the conversation with the Adams administration? I mean, obviously we know what's on the table and what needs to get done, but are you satisfied that at least talks are going in the right direction? Are there no talks at all? Give us where we are.
Yeah, and I guess we can take it back to the mayor's preliminary budget where he proposed $11.2 billion budget for the NYPD to expand discriminatory policing practices. What that means is that our communities, Black and Brown communities, are just going to be hyper policed and then ultimately resulting in an increase in the jail population. But while he's doing that, the mayor is simultaneously proposing deep cuts to essential programs across the city, which include mental health services, legal services, summer youth employment, homelessness services, all of these things that are so essential in making sure that our community members are not being funneled into the jail system to begin with. And so his budget proposal quite clearly shows us his lack of commitment to keeping us on the path to shutting down Rikers. And so one of the things that we're going to have to be doing is pushing the mayor and holding him accountable that he needs to commit to shutting down Rikers, and he needs to propose a budget that reflects that. And right now it doesn't.
And I know you're an organizer, so I got to get this question in. Talk about how the public can really join in on the fight, join in to raise the voice and support the work that you guys are doing in terms of this, the bail reform initiative and dealing with the issues of the incarcerated and mass incarceration.
Absolutely. So like I said, for the public, if you have time, please join us at our rally to close Rikers. It's going to be Thursday, April 27th at 1 p.m. at Foley Square. And you can also check us out online or on our socials at katalcenter.org. That's Katal.
And so what else do we have on the agenda coming up for the Katal Center? I mean, maybe people may not be so familiar with your organization. So before we get a chance to close out, I do want to have an opportunity for you to talk a little bit about the work that you guys do at the organization.
Absolutely. So the Katal Center for Equity, Health, and Justice, we're an organization that's based in Brooklyn, but we work across the state around issues regarding ending mass criminalization, mass incarceration, and ending the war on drugs. And we do that all while building the leadership and organizing capacity of neighborhood residents. So we've been doing a lot of outreach in our community to make sure that our community members understand what is at stake here and understand what the problem is with gutting bail reform and how important it is to protect it, but then also how it relates and connects to the fight to close down Rikers. And so we've been doing a lot of that. So if folks are energized and interested in joining us for outreach, do reach out and stay connected. So my name is Melanie, and you can reach out to me via phone. My number is 516-588-0127. Thank you.
All righty, Melanie Dominguez, lead organizer for the Katal Center. And we want to thank you for being with us, talking about this very important topic mass incarceration, also bail reform. We'll see what happens, and we'll continue to follow this and bring our viewers up to speed as the governor puts her forth plan, and as you also put forth your initiative in trying to get the governor to roll this back. Thank you so much, Melanie, for being with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you all.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes, so we're taking a quick break here on the Social Justice Anti-Violence Forums. We'll be right back after this.